Hi guys, welcome to our live event. My name is Brenda KB Anderson. I'm a crochet instructor and designer, and today I'm going to share with you this really cute bucket hat. Check it out. So it's checkered, obviously, which has just been so popular lately, and I just couldn't resist. I knew I had to do a checkered bucket hat for this summer. This week, all of a sudden, it's just gotten super nice out here, so this project just seems even extra appropriate to me, just from, for where I'm living, but I just kind of really feel the spirit of this cute checkered bucket hat today. So if you're looking at it and thinking, oh, that looks really hard, I've never done color work before, this is one of the most simple color work projects that you can work on if you're trying to learn how to do tapestry crochet. So that is how the colors are changed throughout, and I'm going to be showing you, how to work it up, so you'll be able to do it by the end. So this hat, you start at the top. We're going to work our way down. There's some increasing that happens to make the brim flare out. And then at the bottom, this bottom edge here, we do this kind of interesting edging that's nice and thick. And so when you wear it, it helps your brim kind of stand out, shield you from the sun. It isn't like going to be super ruffly and droopy at that point because it's got that extra thickness that goes around with that contrasting detail. So. All right, so this is a live event, of course. Hello, welcome, glad you guys are here. So if you guys have questions, if you have any comments, definitely put them in the chat. I will answer your questions as best I can during this live event today. If you guys have suggestions or things that you'd like to learn in the future, you can also put that in the chat too. Or if you just want to say hi, tell me where you're crocheting from. I always love that when you guys say hello. So. All right, so we're going to start by just talking about the materials that you're going to need. So for any of these hats, you're going to be needing 3 colors if you want to do, the color changes how I've done them. Obviously, you're going to need those 2 colors to make that checkered look. But if you're really trying to save on yarn and you're like, I don't want to buy 3 colors, then you can, if you don't have scrap yarn for that bottom sort of trim that goes around, that's okay. You can use one of the other 2 colors to do that edging. It'll have a slightly different look to it, but it'll still be super cute. So this is something to think about because that can save you a bunch of money, because this is really, that contrasting color is only being used on that very bottom part. So I found that I was able to get the largest size and then the medium size, so, all out of the same amount of yarn that I ended up buying for one hat, because the largest size, you need a little bit over half of each skein, so, or a ball of yarn like this or cake of yarn. You need a little bit over half, and then the second, in the middle size, you need a little bit less than half. So it worked out so that, if you want to make matching hats with someone who has a slightly smaller or slightly larger head than you, then you might be able to do that with those 3 cakes of yarn or 3 balls of yarn. So something to think about. I do have that information in the pattern download as well, in case you're like, whoa, what did you say, that was too fast? It's definitely in the download. I wrote that in there because I thought that was kind of important information. And speaking of the download, it's free for everybody. You will probably need this download in order to complete this project, because I'm not going through every single stitch count for every single size. I'm going to be teaching you how to do the increases, how to be switching colors. I'm going to be working through the top of the hat, and then once we've kind of established how it works, I'm not going to work through every single round and tell you about stitch counts and all that stuff all the way through. So you're going to need your pattern for that. If you do not, and I think, between the pattern and watching the video, you should be fine. But if you have never read a pattern before and you need a little bit of extra help, there is a link in the pattern to go to a different video where I teach you how to read crochet patterns. So if that's something of interest to you, there is a link in there for you to help you out. But of course, you can ask me questions during the live event if there's anything that's not clear, or you need a little extra help. So don't be shy. Okay, so back to the materials. You're going to need 3 colors of yarn. So we have the main color, the contrast color. So the main color, let me pull this over here. The main color is what I'm calling the orange in this hat. And really, there's not much difference between the main color and the contrasting color. It's just that the main color starts first. So here we have that orange kind of dot in the middle. That's the main, whatever you start with, that's going to be your main color in this pattern. So you've got the main color. I have pink for my contrasting color. And then I have something that I'm calling the edging color, or EC, abbreviated in the pattern, and that's just this little detail of color around the edge of the hat. Let's see, and as far as amounts, they're all written in your pattern. Let's see. But you'll need anywhere from 85 to 105 yards of each of the main color and the contrasting color, and only about like 15 yards of the edging color. So, and as well as the yarn, of course, you're going to need a crochet hook. I am using a G hook, which is a 4mm hook, but you will use whatever size you need to in order to get gauge. And in this project, like many of my projects, I work the gauge, checking the gauge into working the project itself. So you're going to start by working at the top of the hat, and then once you get a circle that's, after working round 6, you'll measure the diameter of that circle, and then you can compare it to my gauge. If your piece is bigger than what I have listed, which is 4.25 inches or 11 centimeters, if your piece is bigger, then try going down a hook size or 2. If your piece is smaller, then you're gonna go up hook sizes, 1 or more, to get the size to the size to match mine, because otherwise your hat will be a surprise size, and nobody wants that. Okay, so let's get started on our hat. We're going to be using the green as our main color and the light pink as our contrasting color for this sample. I'm going to be switching throughout samples and through different color combinations, so you guys can check out some different ones just to get different ideas about what you like. To begin, we're going to make an adjustable loop. So you just kind of draw that little shape like this, flip that over onto the strand connected to the ball, put your hook underneath that strand, and we're going to pull that not all the way tight, but so it's just a little bit open. Then we're going to chain 1. And I like to rotate this loop like that, because then I can work over 2 strands at once and it makes it a little stronger. If you have a different way to make your adjustable loop, absolutely you can do that. I just like teaching it this way because I feel like it's pretty straightforward and easy to remember once you do it a couple of times. Okay, so to start, we're going to be working up a round of extended single crochet stitches into this loop. And extended single crochet, if you guys have never heard of it or worked it up, this is like a miracle crochet stitch, and I have been just in love with the stitch for like the last 10 years. A lot of my designs, I keep going back to that stitch so many times because, first of all, it makes amazing color work. If you've ever worked something in the round, you might notice your stitches start to kind of twist off to the side. And a lot of times, like if you Google checkered bucket hats, a lot of times you'll see that instead of straight lines here where the colors change, they'll all kind of be like slightly offset to the side. The reason it's not happening in my hat is because I'm using the extended single crochet stitch, and that keeps everything really straight and vertical, which is very unusual for crochet worked in the round. So it's a great stitch. Okay, so we're going to place either 7, 8, or 9 extended single crochets into the loop, depending on what size you're making. I'm going to be making the smallest size. So we're going to insert, let me move that out of the way, insert, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 1 loop, then we're going to yarn over and pull through 2 loops, and that completes the first extended single crochet. I'm going to place a stitch marker in the top of my first stitch so I can just kind of keep track of that when I come back around, because sometimes it's a little hard to tell where your first stitch is. But later on, using a stitch marker, it might help you, especially if you're newer to crochet, but we're going to be working in joined rounds. So if you have ever done that before, you know that when you start your next round, there's already a kind of a bump there. So I generally don't use a stitch marker in this project. I just kind of am throwing it in to that very first stitch just to make it extra clear where that is. Okay, so I've got the first extended single crochet in there, and I'm going to do 6 more. So I'm going to insert, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2. There's the second one. Insert, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2. Okay, so we've got 3. I'm going to do that 4 more times. Insert, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 2. and then 1 more, 2, and 3. And let's check and make sure we have 7 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and there's my marked stitch number 7. So then at this point you can pull on your beginning yarn tail and tighten up that loop. And we are going to do a slip stitch join in the very first stitch we made, which is right there. So we're just going to insert our hook, grab that yarn, pull through, and pull through the loop on our hook. All right, so now, starting with round 2, we're going to be switching back and forth between 2 different colors. Let's see, I'm going to grab this lighter pink here. Oh, we've got some good mornings. Good morning to you, Kathleen, and oh, Natalie, hello, type of yarn, cotton. Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you for reminding me. I forgot to mention that. All of the specifics are in your download, so if you want to know the colors, the brand, and all that stuff, it's in the download. But I'm using a worsted weight cotton. So this is a dishcloth cotton, but this particular cotton brand is a little bit softer and just a little bit thinner than most of the big box number 4 medium weight cottons that you find in the big box stores. So I just wanted to give you that little bit of a heads up, so you might want to check out this yarn just to make sure. If you are using a slightly heavier weight cotton, it'll still turn out okay feeling wise, and it'll be nice and stiff like you want your brim to be, but your hat might be a little bit bigger. So you may have to go down a hook size, might be a little bit harder on your hands. Cotton is already something that is hard on some people's hands because there's basically no elasticity in a lot of cottons. This one has a teensy bit of elasticity, but not really very much. But I like that for this type of hat. Not only is it cool for in the summer to be having cotton yarn, but also it'll keep its kind of stiff shape when you crochet it up at a fairly tight gauge, which is what we're doing here. Thank you for asking that, Natalie. I don't know how, but I just kind of spaced out that information. But as always, all of the detailed information is in your download. So I always write down the brand, the color, and all that kind of stuff. So you can always check into that. And we have a hello from Diana. Hi, Diana. Thanks for saying hi. Okay, so now we're going to be grabbing that second yarn, the second color. First, we're just going to do a 1 chain with that main color. So we've done our chain 1. Then we're going to take that second color. I'm going to bring it up. So here's the beginning tail. I'm going to bring this up right behind the top edge of where I'm going to be working. Okay. So let me get the screen out of the way so you can see. So it's going to be sitting right here, right along that very top edge. And I'm going to crochet around it, encasing this with my next stitch. So in the same space where I did my join, I'm going to make an extended single crochet right there. So insert, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 1. And then we're going to stop for a second because at this point we're going to switch colors before we complete that first stitch. So we're going to drop the main color. I'm going to drop that to the back, and I'm going to pick up the lighter color, which is the pink. That's the contrast color. And I'm going to yarn over and pull through 2 to finish off that first extended single crochet and also to change to the next color. Now, I'm going to work into the very same stitch that I just worked into, but this time I'm going to make a pink extended single crochet. So I'm going to insert, and I'm crocheting over the green. So you can see I'm holding that right along this top edge. So that's going to get trapped when I do that yarn over. Yarn over, pull through 1, and then to switch to the other color, which is what we're going to do next, we're going to drop the pink. I'm going to bring that to the front. Then we're going to pick up the green, yarn over, and pull through 2 to complete that second extended single crochet and to change color to green. Now we're going to repeat this around. So the first stitch, so each stitch around is going to get 2 stitches in it. The first one's going to be the main color, and then the second stitch is going to be the contrasting color. So that's going to happen in every remaining stitch around. And we're always going to be working over this yarn. So we're going to insert here in the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 1, and then we are going to drop the main color to the back, pick up the contrasting color, and complete our extended single crochet. And now we're going to do a pink stitch in that same stitch. So right there, insert, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 1, drop to the front, pick up the other color, and pull through 2. So just in case you're wondering why I'm dropping to the front, dropping to the back, that helps you to not tangle up your yarn. It's not the kind of thing, you know, when you're first learning this, it's very, and even when you're not first learning this, let's just be honest, it's easy to not pay attention to that, and then you kind of have this big twisted thing happening. That's probably going to happen, and that is completely okay. Once you get a twisty, annoying thing, with every time you switch back and forth between your yarns, at that point you can untwist, and I'll probably show you that in a little bit once it starts getting twisted up. I'm pretty sure it's going to happen because I'm concentrating on what I'm doing and teaching you. So usually when I do that, I end up not paying too much attention to where I'm setting that yarn down. So it's probably going to get twisted in a little bit. Okay, so we're going to continue making these 2 extended single crochets into each stitch and switching color. So here's the green one. We're going to finish that up with the pink. And here's the pink one. And we're going to finish that up with the green. Here's a green one. Finish it up with the pink. And when I mean by finish it up, I just mean that last yarn over of the stitch. That's where we stop and pull through with the next color to get it ready for the next stitch. Because when you're doing that last yarn over, you're not actually making a part of the stitch you're currently working on, you're actually making the top of the following stitch. That's why we change color on that last yarn over of the previous stitch. So I know this looks a little, I don't know, a little bit tricky at the beginning, but the first couple rounds are the hardest, and it does get easier. It gets so much easier both with practice, but also because you can see as you move through the project what color you're supposed to be using after this. I'll explain that a little bit more as we get a little further in. So at this point, when you've worked all the way around, you should have a total of 14, 16, or 18 stitches, just depending on what size you're working. So you'll have 7, 8, or 9 of each color. So 7 of the main color and 7 of the light color, or of the contrasting color, or 8 of the main color, 8 of the contrasting color. So you can easily count up your stitches just by looking for those different colors. So I'm going to count the pink ones. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Here's the 7th one, and I know the second stitch I made in each stitch was the lighter color. So when I get around to the end, I'm going to yarn over and, whoops, I still have to finish that stitch. So I'm going to yarn over, pull through 2 with that green color to change color to the next color. So that way, when I make that slip stitch into the very first stitch of the round right here, there we go, you want to catch that. Just making a slip stitch into the very first extended single crochet of the round. I'm making my slip stitch there and making it in the green, and it's going to blend right in. Okay, so the next round we're going to do, let's see, round number 3. So we're going to start with the main color, which is what we already have, and we're going to chain 1. And then we're going to work into that very same stitch that we joined, the first green stitch that we have here, and we're going to do 2 extended single crochets into the green stitch. And on the second one, we're going to change to the lighter color. Then we're going to do 2 single crochets in the lighter color. On the second of those stitches, we're changing to green. So basically, what we're doing is we're putting 2 stitches into each stitch around, and we're matching the color. So here's the first extended single crochet. And here's the second one, and remember we got to change color on the last yarn over. So there we go. And now we're going to do 2 extended single crochets into the matching color, and we got to change to the main color. So we can do 2 here. So you can just read your stitches by looking at what color comes next. Just make sure that you are changing your color every 2 stitches. And that should be fine. And you'll start to see those little checkers just barely forming. It kind of, to me, the center of the hat, the very top of the hat, actually looks like a sun. Which makes this hat even cuter, in my opinion. I love that it looks like that. That was a happy accident. I was not planning to make a sun on the top, but I was happy when it did. So as you're working your way around, you'll see me do this after, when I change to the next color, I kind of pull on it just a little bit before I do my yarn over, and just make sure it's not too loose and not too tight. So what I mean by that is, so when you're crocheting around and you're working over a strand of yarn, this will become a little bit more obvious later when we have a longer area to carry our yarn when the checkers get wider. But you want to make sure that that yarn that's being carried through there is not like sticking out of the back or looping out or doing something weird. So I gently pull on it just a little bit. And then you'll want to just make sure that you didn't pull it too tight. You don't want it to restrict your work. That's just something that it gets easier as you get a little bit more comfortable with the switching the colors, and it'll become automatic to you. After, when you're partway through this hat, you'll just start doing it, I think, if you're paying attention to what that strand is looking like back there. All right, I have one more stitch to work into. Here we are. And then instead of changing to green, we're going to leave it with the pink. And the reason why is because our next round is going to start with pink right here. So we're going to do, there's the top of my first extended single crochet. We're going to do our slip stitch into the top of that stitch like this. And then we're going to chain one to start. So every time we start working a new round, we slip stitch and then we chain one. And then we work an extended single crochet into the same space as we slip stitched. So on round number, let's see, 1, 2, 3, we're working round number 4. We're continuing with the contrast in color, that's the pink. And we're going to do extended single crochets into each of the next 2 stitches. Then we're going to switch to the other color and work 2 stitches. This round doesn't have any increasing in it. So we're just going to place an extended single crochet right there into the green one, and then an extended single crochet into the next green one, and then we're going to switch colors. So now we're working the green into the pink. So this whole round we're working the opposite color of what's there. So you get to the green section and you're going to be making pink into the green section. And green into the pink section. So throughout this hat, see, I have a little bit of a tangle here. I mean, that's not super tangly, but it's starting to twist because I'm not paying attention, which is completely fine. But I just wanted to take this minute. I mean, I could keep going for a while just by separating it with my finger like this, but if you look at it, you can tell which way you need to place the yarn to untwist it. So if I take my pink yarn and I put it this way, and then take my green and put it this way, it's untwisting it over here. So what that means is I'm going to be dropping my yarn to the back every time I switch colors for a little while, and that should untwist it. And you don't need to worry so much about this. If it gets twisted, you can just kind of untangle it. You can take the balls of yarn and wind them the opposite way around each other. If it gets into a knot or something like that, just cut one strand, pull it through, and then add it back in. So it's really, it's one of those things that definitely improves over time when you just get used to handling the yarn. But I wanted to just kind of give you some tips because I know that some people when they're first starting, they get pretty frustrated with getting their yarn tangled. So I'm going to be dropping my yarn to the back, no matter what color it is. And that'll untangle it. And when I say, I hope that's not too confusing, when I say I'm dropping my yarn to the back, I just mean of the other, compared to where the other strand is. I'm always dropping yarn. I'm always going to be holding yarn kind of like up on top and crocheting over the one that's up on top. it's not like I want one to be hanging down here as I crochet along, if that makes sense. All right, you have just a few more to do to complete this round. All right, 2 more stitches. And then I am going to complete that stitch with the pink, just like I have been, to change color to the pink, so I can do my slip stitch here and continue with the pink, just like that. So on my next round, I am going to chain 1, working over that yarn. We're always working over the unused yarn, and I'm going to place 1 extended single crochet into the first stitch, and then 2 extended single crochets into the second stitch. And when I do the second of those, that's when I'm going to switch to the green, because on this round we're matching color. So meaning if you see a green stitch, when you work into it, you're going to be working with green. So here's my second stitch. So 1 pink here and 2 pinks here. And we got to change to the green at the very end. So 1 green here and 2 greens in the next stitch. And then we'll pick up the pink and yarn over that to finish it. So this whole round we are doing an increase in each section of color. And anytime we're going to be doing an increase in this hat pattern, like once we've gotten this far in it, any round that you're doing an increase, you're going to do an increase in every single section, because that's what keeps the checker pattern looking uniform. So you'll know if you're doing any increases, you're doing an increase into each single section of color. And we're always going to do that increase in the very last stitch of that color before changing to the next color. So I feel like it just kind of helps to know that, so you can anticipate it throughout the pattern. I mean, it is all written out. They will tell you, the pattern will tell you where to do your increases, but I'm one of those people who I don't really like to sift through all of the words sometimes when I'm reading a pattern, and I like to just kind of understand a little bit more about how the pattern works and how the stitches relate to each other. And if there's, you know, repetition throughout, it really does help me a lot. So regardless of what size you are working up, everything is pretty much the same, except that you'll have a different amount of color repeats around. So I've got 7 sections of, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sections of each of the colors, because I'm doing the smallest size. But if you were doing the medium size, then you'd have 8. If you're doing the largest size, you would have 9. But the amount of stitches and where you're doing the increases and all that per color, that's the same throughout for no matter what size you're working on. Oh, and I should have mentioned too that, I mean, there are 3 sizes in this pattern. I did mention that earlier. But I did want to, I know we're going backwards just for a second here, but I forgot to mention this. I want those to be clear. It's always best to pick out your size based on your measurements and comparing that. And I always try to have a little note, like you're just going to choose the hat size that's closest to whatever your head measurement weighs or measures. But the sizing right here, I just wanted to make sure that this was clear enough for people reading it, because I know there's a lot of like these slashes and it's confusing looking. So the sizes are kind of meant for a small child, and then a child medium, or an adult small medium, and then the largest size is an adult, medium, large. Now, if you're going to make it for a child, don't just assume that, you know, you would make it the child smaller, the child medium, depending on how old they are. Just definitely measure their heads, because head sizes vary a lot. And like, my kids have been wearing adult hats for, you know, they started wearing adult hats since they were like probably in 2nd grade or something like that. So, you know, that doesn't necessarily mean anything, just that label. So I always try to put the finished measurements just so you can compare them to your own and make sure you get a nice fit. Okay. All right, let me open this up so we can see where we're at. So right now we have worked through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, round number 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we are going to do our last yarn over in the same color, because we're switching our checker pattern. It's going to shift on the next round here. So what I mean by that is we're going to do our slip stitch in green on the pink, and then we're going to continue with that color. So your slip stitch, when you do your slip stitch, that's always going to be in the color that starts out the next round, if that makes sense. So the slip stitch at the end of your round, you need to think ahead and be like, what's the color I'm going to need at the beginning of the next round? That's what color your slip stitch should be. It does tell you in the pattern as well, but sometimes it's just easier to know how it works. Okay. All right, so we're going to do an extended single crochet into the next 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3, and we're going to switch to the other color. So this time we're doing opposite colors. Okay, so if you see green, you're going to work pink into it. And we're not increasing on this round. So one way to tell without reading through all the instructions, or you know, if you just want to know at a glance, am I increasing in this round or not? If you look at your pattern, at the end, if it has numbers at the end and they're italicized, you know, 42, 48, 54, that is telling you how many stitches you have at the end of the round. So if that's there, that means that there's been a change. In this pattern, it'll be increases that were made. That means there's been a change within that round. If you look at the end, say for round 6, there's no italicized numbers here, so that means you have this, you're not increasing. So we don't have to update the stitch count. It's going to be the same as the last listed numbers, if that makes sense. That's a convention that a lot of people use, but some people list the stitch counts every single line. And I used to think that that was more helpful so you could double check, but now I kind of like listing them only when there's been a change. That's how I was originally trained to write patterns. And I kind of went back to that because I feel like then at a quick scan you can see if there were increases or decreases that happen, and you need to pay extra attention if there's those numbers listed at the end. All right, so basically, you know almost everything you need to know to make this hat. You know how to switch between colors. You know where the increases are. And the increases, that just means you're putting 2 extended single crochets into a stitch like that. We're not actually increasing here though, so I'm not going to do that. I got to switch to green. So you know how to continue increasing, and your pattern will tell you, you know, where to change color, you know, what color slip stitch to do, and what kind of color pattern you're doing around. Your pattern will tell you that. It will also tell you where to put your increases and all that sort of thing. But so now that we know all of that, you can just continue working on your hat. And as you get further out in your hat, you're going to start doing more rows. So there will be 3 rows before changing to the next color. So if we take a look at this, the top of this hat, we've got just 2 rows in that color, and then we switched, you know, the checkered switched. So if we went from orange to pink here, then the next set is going to be 3 rows right here. So 1, 2, and 3. Okay, and that's going to remain constant throughout to the end of the hat. So once you switch to those 3 rounds, you'll know every time you're going to be working 3 rounds before you switch, you know, alternate to the opposite placement of the colors, if that makes sense. So there's going to be a section, you're going to keep increasing every once in a while. Your pattern will tell you where. And then there's going to be a section where you're just working in the checker pattern even. You're not doing any increases for a while throughout this section of the hat. If you're working a smaller size, it is only for one little section that you're not doing any increasing. And then after that, then you're going to go back to increasing, because that's what's going to shape the brim here. See how it kind of it goes straight here and then it flares out when you've got that little edge there. So there are increases in the middle. So if there's 3 rounds here in orange, it's always going to be in that middle one that's having that increase. Once you get further along in the hat, it's that middle one gets the increase, if that makes sense. And it's, like I said before, you're going to increase in every section of color, and you're always going to be making your increase right before you change to the next color. So you can see there's an increase right here. There's 2 extended single crochets right here, and we move further along in that row. There's 2 extended single crochets right here, 2 right here. So that's where you can be expecting your increases. But that's all, it's all written out in the pattern, no problem. Oh, I'm getting very behind in my comments. We gotta back up here. Sorry, guys. Oh, Linnea says, good morning and thank you for the video. I've been wanting to make a checkered bucket hat and no one shows tutorials. Will this video be saved for later? Yes, we can always go back and watch these things later, so you don't have to worry. Oh, and Cindy's here. Good morning. Good morning, Seawolf Pack from Central Pennsylvania. And Linnea says, wonderful, thank you. I will be doing this tonight. Awesome. Oh, this weather was messing with my sinuses and arthritis in my hands. It's a good morning to sip coffee and hang out with all of you. Oh, I hope you feel better soon. That's a bummer. Yes, and Seawolf Pack is saying that it looks like a good stash busting project. It is, because I end up with lots of like half of a skein left, and so it's kind of perfect. She says, LOL, watching Brenda ignore her own instructions and tangle up the yarn. Yep, see, it's really hard to pay attention the whole time. See, that's why I need to teach you how to untangle it, right? Okay. All right. Oh, we've got Vanessa watching on Instagram. Awesome. From New York City. Cool. Or just twirl the project around since it's small. Oh, yeah. So Cindy's saying if you get all tangled up, so this is all twisted right here, you can just take your project and untwist it like this, which is great. And this works fantastic for, if your project is a little smaller. If it starts getting a little bit bigger, then it gets a little awkward. But that is a very good point. Yes. Cool. Okay. So once you have finished up, working all your rounds, then you're going to work the edging. And I'm going to show you how to do that because it's a little bit unconventional. So I'm going to make sure that it makes sense to you guys. So here we are. This is another colorway here. And I'm just finishing up the very last round of my hat before I switch to the edging. Okay, so I'm just doing my last few extended single crochets here. There's the last one of that color. I am going to switch to the purple so I can do my joining slip stitch right here. And then I am going to fasten that off and actually cut the other color as well. And then these can be woven in. To get rid of those, you can do that at any point. I am going to go ahead and just start working on the edging. So to do the edging, we're actually going to be working from the wrong side of the hat. So this whole time we've been working around and around and around in our join rounds, always looking at the same side of the hat, right? So as we're just spinning it around, we're always working from that side. Now we're going to be turning it so we can see what's going on the inside. We're going to be working on the inside of the hat first. So I'm going to grab my edging color. So I'm just going to be using this orange here. And I'm going to pull up a loop from really any stitch. You can start wherever you want. I find that even though the joins do blend in pretty darn well, they're really hard to see here. I still like to join my yarn for the contrasting color and keep all my joins in the same spot. I think of that as the back of the hat, but honestly, it's so subtle, like it really looks good. So you don't really need to worry too much about it. But we're going to be working underneath just the front loop, and front meaning the loop that's closer to you. Now I know that might be confusing because normally we were working with this side facing. We're thinking about this as being the outside, the front of our hat. But when we look at the fabric and I say, you know, in the pattern, like pull up a loop from the front loop, that means the loop that's closest to you. So instead of inserting your hook underneath both strands, how we normally do in crochet, we're just going to insert it underneath just the front, right there. We're going to grab a strand of yarn and pull up a loop. We'll chain one just to kind of anchor our yarn there, and then we're going to do a single crochet into each front loop around. So this is going to leave those back loops free. Okay, so we're just doing just a regular a single crochet. In case you don't already know what a single crochet is, you'll just insert your hook under your loop, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through two. That's one of the most basic crochet stitches there are. And we're just going to keep working underneath that front loop only. So this is all in your instructions. Let me get to the edging round. Oh, brim edging. So it'll be underneath the brim edging section of your pattern. FLP, that stands for the front loop. In case you're wondering what the abbreviations are, there's a key in here. I think it's at the beginning, but it might be at the end. Yep, there it is, this little gold box. That'll tell you what all your abbreviations mean. So we're just working that single crochet through the front loop, and we're going to go all the way around the whole hat until we get to the end. And here we are. So I'm almost done working through the front loops in this hat. I just have 2 more stitches here, making those single crochets. And so that was our very last stitch. Then we're going to make a slip stitch into that very first single crochet we made. So we'll just go in there, grab that yarn, pull through, and pull through. Then we are going to chain 1 to join, or to start our next round here. And we're going to work into that very same stitch as our join. So this time we're going to work underneath the back loop. So remember, before we worked under the front loop, that was here. Now we're going to work under the back loop only, which is right here. So we're just going to be doing single crochets around, working in that back loop. So that's leaving the loop that's towards us free. And the reason that I did this was because this gives it a nice area. It's kind of like a fold line, basically. It creates an area for this little bit of an edging to fold because it's only connected to one loop. So you're just going to do 1 single crochet into the back loop all the way around your hat, all the way to this point right here, okay? And so later it's going to be able to fold like this. All right, so let me show you what that looks like. We are almost to the end here. Still working through the back loop, making single crochets. And now we have worked our very last stitch. We're going to do a slip stitch in the first single crochet right here. And then we're going to chain 1. We're going to turn our work now, so that way we're looking at the right side of our hat, the outside of our hat. Okay, so we chained 1, and now we're going to insert our hook underneath our stitch from down here that we left open when we did our very first round, and we're going to insert through underneath both loops of the stitches we just made. We're going to yarn over, pull through everything, including the loop on our hook, and that's going to make a slip stitch. So let's do that into the next stitch. So right here there's an open loop that was left over from when we made round 1 of the edging, and we're going to go underneath both strands of that the last edge that we made there. We're going to pull the yarn through that and through the loop on our hook. So as we are making these slip stitches, what we're really doing is we're folding the edge of our brim. This little sort of narrow contrasting stripe is getting folded and it's doubled, so it's thicker. And that slip stitch makes a nice, pretty solid looking edge right there, and it covers up that little bit of the other colors that you kind of see peeking through there. But when you do that slip stitch, it covers it up, and so the whole edge of it, just kind of all the way around, it looks almost rounded or squared off even, I guess, because we did that working through the back loop on the previous row. So that kind of gave it a nice place to fold. I'll do a few more and then I'll show you a little bit more what this looks like. So what's happening here is that we're able to have a very dense area of stitches. We're making a nice little kind of self hem right here, and that is going to be able to make the edge of our hat be stiffer and stand out in the sun. You know, be a nice brim and not be floppy hanging down in her eyes, because that's annoying. Okay, so there's that extra ridge. It's kind of thick right here, right along that edge, and it's nice and stiff. You can see, like right here, this is pretty floppy because it hasn't been stitched, but this is much stiffer. You know, I can kind of even just show you what that looks pretty good. So it's making a difference there. So even if you didn't want that contrasting color there, I really think that it's worth doing these 3 rounds here because it's going to make the edge of your hat look just that much more, just stiff and have that structure that looks so good. All right, it looks like I'm all caught up on my questions. I don't think I missed any. Oh, Peyton is saying, I was just making this the other day. Well, bucket hats are the perfect thing for the summertime, or spring. It's not summer yet. I'm just kind of leaping forward to this super sunshiny weather here that we're having. All right, thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you for saying hi. Thank you for your questions and reminding me I needed to talk about the yarn weight and what it's made out of. I appreciate you guys piping up when I'm, if I'm saying something that's confusing. I really do appreciate that. That helps everybody. But yeah, thank you guys so much for joining me. And at about 11:30, I'm going to be doing another live tutorial, and this time we're going to be talking about safety eyes. So if you have been interested in working on amigurumi, if you have any questions about safety eyes, I'm going to be showing you how they work, but also I've done a lot of amigurumi making and found some really interesting safety eyes, so there's going to be kind of a little bit of show and tell, and I'm going to be talking about different tools to use to insert the safety eyes as well to make it a little easier on your hands. So if you guys are interested in that, come on back at 11:30 and and say hi. All right, thanks everybody, bye.